Hi there, my name is Steve Stein, and today what I'm going to do is show you how to play Across the Universe by the Beatles. This song is generally tuned down a half step. I am not tuned down a half step. I'm going to show you how to play it, and if you'd like to play along with the actual song, you could go ahead and tune your guitar down a half step, and that would be just great. So the first thing I'm going to do is play a little bit for you, and then I'm going to explain to you how this works. So here we go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is explain to you this little picking part in the beginning here. What we're doing is I'm going to be hybrid picking. I like to strum with my pick, so I'm going to be holding the pick between my index finger and my thumb, and I'm going to be using my middle finger to pluck the first string as well, and I'm going to show you that. If you have a really hard time hybrid picking with this, you can always finger pick it as well, and then you'd either have to grab a pick for the strumming part or just strum with your fingers, which is fine. But here's what I'm doing. I'm making, down here, what I'm going to do is use my middle finger on the third string, okay, on the second fret. I'm going to take my ring finger, my third finger, I'm going to place that on the first string, also in the second fret. So I'm going to pluck the third string with my pick, like I normally would. Then I'm going to use my middle finger over here to pluck the first string. Okay, so I'm plucking those, and then as soon as I pluck those, I'm going to pluck the fourth string open. And while that's open, I'm moving. That's what I'm using that open string for. So I'm heading up here. Now you'll see I've got my middle finger still on the third string, but now I'm at the 11th fret, and my first finger is now on the 10th fret of the first string. Okay, so if you think about it, what I'm doing is I'm actually moving from my middle finger and my third finger up here, but then I'm moving over to my first finger like this, okay? So it's easy for me to move back and forth. There's lots of songs that I do this with. So instead of starting with my first finger up here on the third string and then having to flip over, if I start with my middle finger on that third string, I don't have to flip over at all. So here it goes. Okay, then I'm going to pluck the fourth string again, so. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that original shape at the 9th fret. So my middle finger is up here on the third string 9th fret, and my third finger is on the first string 9th fret. And then I'm simply going to move back 2 frets to the 7th fret. So now we have this. Okay, and that fourth string can ring out over the top. It would be just fine. Then what I have to do is move back one more to the 6th fret, but I'm going to switch again to my first finger on the 5th fret. Okay, so you're just switching back and forth like that between those two notes. Okay, now there's one more note we have to add in before we start strumming. So right now we're sitting here at the 5th and 6th frets. I'm going to take my pinky, but you could use your third finger. It doesn't matter, whatever's more comfortable for you. And I'm going to go to the 7th fret of the second string. Okay, sorry about that, right there. So I've got okay, and then I'm going to take off and do my strumming. So one more time, I'm going from the 2s to 10 and 11, plucking that fourth string again, then 9s and 7s, then split over to 5 and 6, and add my pinky here. And again, you could use your third finger if you'd rather. It's more comfortable for me to use my pinky. Then I'm going to drop down. Now, if you know your bar chords, follow this. If you don't, just watch what I'm doing with my fingers, okay? So what I'm going to do next is going to come out of the F sharp minor bar chord on the 2nd fret. Okay, 6th string right here. Okay, but because I need to use my fingers for different things, I can't make that whole shape. So what I'm going to do is just go into the middle of that shape. So I'm going to use my third finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string, and then I'm going to use my first finger on the 2nd and 3rd strings on the 2nd fret. Okay, so I'm just strumming those 3 strings, 4, 3, and 2. Okay, so this guy's on the 4th string, 4th fret, and this one's barring over the 2nd and 3rd strings on the 2nd fret. Then what I'm going to do is use my pinky. See, I'm adding my pinky onto the 3rd string underneath my ring finger. And then I'm going to drop over to an A chord, okay? So I'm playing an A chord, but instead of playing it with 3 different fingers, I'm just playing it kind of like a power chord, if you know what those are. So I'm pressing, and then I'm going to add that same note on again. Right there on the 3rd string, 4th fret. So it's the same note I was tapping on before, and I could still use my pinky. Or maybe I'll use my 3rd finger. Just whichever one's comfortable for you. So that's the intro to the song. So let me play it for you nice and slow. Then the A. Okay? Then we start the verse. Now the verse is going to use a D chord, a B minor chord, which you would either play like this as an open chord if you've learned it that way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you'd play it as a bar chord. If you can play it as a bar chord, I would always recommend doing that because it'll sound a little more full, obviously. So as the bar chord, I'm playing a 5th string, 2nd fret minor bar chord. And again, if you don't know what bar chords are, you can look up some of my other videos and I explain to you what those are. So I'm going from D major, open chord, to B minor bar chord on the 5th string, to F sharp minor, which is what I was kind of just talking about, on the 6th string right here. So I'm going from D, B minor, F sharp minor. Okay, so if we were counting it like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we thought of it that speed, we'd have 1 measure of D, 1 measure of B minor, and then 2 measures of F sharp minor. Then E minor, then A. Now some variations that you could use in this, for instance, when you go to E minor, you could play it as an E minor 7 chord, which is an E minor, and I'm taking my pinky and I'm adding it on the 2nd string, 3rd fret, which sounds kind of pretty. Then I might go to A, then A7, and A7 is just taking the middle note off of the A chord. So no matter what fingering you're using for an A, you just take the middle note off, and you can transition right into that A7 really quick. You can always refinger it or whatever you'd like to. So those are options, okay? The way I always teach songs is trying to get you to be able to play from point A to point B, whatever that is, as quickly as possible so you can actually play along with the song and enjoy it. Once you've done that, what you can do is color up songs by making them a little more interesting to yourself, to your listener, whatever. And so those are some different things that you could do with E minor and A. They're certainly not required to play this song. So let me play you through the verse here, and you could follow along. You can play along if you'd like to, starting on D. 1, 2, ready, and D, B minor, F sharp minor for 2 measures, E minor, or E minor 7 for 2, then A for 2. Then we start all over again, so now I'm on D again. B minor, F sharp minor for 2, then E minor. But right there what happens is instead of doing E minor for 2 measures, you only do E minor for 1 measure, and then you head over to a G minor bar chord, which is at the 3rd fret. So it looks just like F sharp minor, but it's at the 3rd fret instead. Okay? Now, that pretty much encompasses the entire song. Okay, you're either going to end going from E minor to A, or you're going to end going from E minor to G minor. Okay, and I have the lyrics here, so if you're familiar with this song, which hopefully you are if you're trying to learn it, whenever he says possessing and caressing me, that's where you go to G minor. Okay, and then there's one other spot where he says enticing and inciting and inviting me. When he says that, you go to G minor. Otherwise, every other time, you're always going to go from E minor to the A chord. And see, when I teach songs, I always try and tell students, okay, if you could think of the song as being 80% this, okay, whatever that thing is, and then the other 20% are kind of the red flags. They're the parts that confuse you. So in this song, we've got our intro, which would be the first confusing part. And then the second part would be the G minor, knowing where that G minor goes. So if you thought of it this way, every time you play the verse, you're playing D, B minor, F sharp minor, E minor, A. It's always that. Except when you say those two lines. When you say possessing and caressing me, that's E minor to G minor. And then when you say inciting and inviting me, that's E minor to G minor as well. Okay? So if you thought of it that way, that's the entire song. We've got our intro, we got our D, B minor, F sharp minor, E minor to A. Except when we say those lines. Then we're going from E minor to G minor. Okay? Now, the only other odd thing, which if you're learning this off this video right now, I would like you to map out if you have a piece of paper handy, is that there's a couple spots where the timing is a bit unusual. So if you were coming off the first section of the verse and you're going D, B minor, F sharp minor, E minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, what happens there is there's a couple of extra strums, there's a couple extra beats, and you have to get used to those. There's a couple you got to watch out for right after universe, and then there's a couple you have to watch out for right after possessing and caressing me. Okay, and then we're fine all the way down into across the universe again in the second verse. There's an extra beat or two there. And then you're fine all the way down until the inciting and inviting me part, which again has a couple extra beats there. So those are the red flags that I would set up. So when I'm mapping out this song, I'd have my intro, and then I've got my verse, which is, again, D, B minor, F sharp minor, E to A, except when those lines are said, then it's E minor to G minor. Okay, and then I've got these cue words, these key words that I know there's going to be a confusion as far as how you want to count it is entirely up to you. But there's a little bit extra beat in there. There's a little bit extra time in there. After universe, after caressing me, after across the universe again, and then after inviting me. Okay. Now the very end of the song. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to get to the chorus here. So the chorus goes like this. It goes D. Then it goes to an A7 sus4, then A7. So what an A7 sus4 is just taking an A7 chord, but instead of playing the second fret of the second string, you're going to play the third fret of the second string. Okay? So it sounds really pretty when you go from D to that A7 sus4. Now again, you can go to A7 any way you like. If you use 1 and 2, that's fine. You could use your third finger for the sus, or just slide your middle finger up a fret. Again, you have to explore what's most comfortable for you. If I was coming from D to the A7 sus4 right here, right there I went from first finger to third finger, and then I've got my A7. Then you go to G, nothing's gonna change, and then you go to D, then you do it again, A7, then to G, to D. Then you stay on D and start the second verse. And you just keep going back and forth between those parts. There's never really a pause. The entire song is just sung over and over and over. There's no breaks anywhere. Then when you get to the very end of the song, you just keep playing D until it fades out. So you just have D. Now the strum for this song would be built off this idea. This is where your quarter notes would be. So your eighth notes would be in between. And again, please always remember, you can watch other videos where I discuss this sort of thing, but the big thing is trying to either A, listen to the song and replicate the strum as much as you see fit, or you just feel the motion of your arm and just make up different kinds of rhythms as you play. The two things you always want to think about is just sort of varietizing the rhythms that you're playing, so the entire song doesn't have the exact same strumming pattern. And the second thing is dynamics. Remember that you can, when you play songs, you can always strum louder or softer or different things like that to give the song a bit of realism. So if I was going to play the verse, so if I'm going... the chorus. D, A sus, A7, G, D, and so on, you see? So that's how you take a song. You start off by learning how the parts go. You learn how to play along with the song. But then you try and convert it into something that when you play it for other people, it actually sounds, real and musical. And that's always the goal. So I hope you enjoy this video. And please make sure that you let me know if there's any other videos you'd like me to do. You can get a hold of me. There's a little thing you can click on over in the corner. And I will learn some songs for you. Thank you very much.